Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. Festival of Legends is now live, and in this video I'm going to take a look at this latest Hearthstone expansion. I'm going to look at the best decks for all classes, all the best decks for all the classes, what has been good early in Festival of Legends. You will know it all after you have watched this video. First of all, a couple of words about the meta. The meta in general is dominated by two classes. There's Demon Hunter with Outcast Demon Hunter, and then there's Death Knight. And Death Knight basically has three very strong decks, because we have Frost Death Knight and we have Unholy Death Knight, which are both doing really well in general. And then we have Blood Death Knight. Blood Death Knight is not doing as well as the other two, but it has the advantage that it's trying to counter all the other top tier meta decks, Outcast Demon Hunter and the other Death Knight decks. So there might be something to Blood Death Knight that can still surprise and grab some wins in certain situations. And overall, the best Blood Death Knight deck, which is by the way this one, does post currently a 60% win rate. So yeah, it is looking really strong. So with that said, let's take a deeper look into the decks themselves. I have 15 decks in this video, so let's go ahead with the Blood Death Knight. Blood Death Knight. Blood Death Knight uses some new cards, like Screaming Banshee, like Ghost Rider, like the weapon Arcanite Ripper. However, I'm not completely convinced about all of these cards. In particular, Ghost Rider is one of the weakest cards in this list. Screaming Banshee is kind of mediocre. It can be super strong sometimes when it works, but sometimes it's just too slow. And then Construct Quarter. Construct Quarter is a card that was already nerfed earlier, and it still has had a place in Blood Death Knight, but it's starting to look like Construct Quarter is also falling behind. So there are several points of potential improvement in Blood Death Knight, but overall Blood Death Knight is quite good at defending, and against decks like Outcast Demon Hunter, for example, Blood Death Knight could be one of the answers. Then again, a good answer to Outcast Demon Hunter already exists in the form of Frost Death Knight. Frost Death Knight is overall the strongest Death Knight deck, and also Frost Death Knight does not use a single card from Festival of Legends. Yep, no new cards whatsoever, still going in with those Foul Eggs and the Overseer Frigidara and the Marrow Manipulators. And Frost Death Knight is simply powerful, no new cards needed. You can be at the very top of Legends right now with the old cards, so yeah, that's sweet if you don't have the new ones. And then there is the third Death Knight archetype. In performance, this is between Blood and Frost, so Frost is the best, then Unholy, and then Blood. Unholy Death Knight, what kind of Unholy Death Knight deck should you build? That is a bit more of an open question at the moment, because there's been a lot of talk about Death Growl, choose a minion, spread its Death Rattle to adjacent minions, and adding stuff like Nerubian Eggs to the deck, so you will have even more of those Death Rattles, maybe even Naval Mines. Just having stuff with Death Rattles, spreading those Death Rattles could be strong. Is it strong? Well, the statistics right now are inconclusive. Death Growl itself in performance is looking like the weakest card in this list, but this list looks like the best performing list, so maybe some card has to be the weakest card. Maybe the version with Death Growl is still stronger than the version without it, even though Death Growl has not turned out to be phenomenal in this archetype. Regardless, Unholy Death Knight, definitely a viable deck, pretty strong deck, so if you like playing Death Knight, you can play all sorts of Death Knight still in this environment. And then there is the hottest newcomer, which is the Outcast Demon Hunter. Outcast Demon Hunter with those rush minions with Halveria Darkraven, rush after friendly rush minion attacks, give your minions +1 attack. It can just build some really super strong minions, especially attack-wise. They don't really get any health, but they can have like 6 attack, 8 attack, 10 attack, wow, just crazy sized minions. Halveria is pretty strong, however, the strongest card in this deck is actually Fellerine, the Forgotten. Valcry, add a random Outcast card to the left and right sides of your hand, they cost 2 less. Now there's enough Outcast synergies, and the Outcast pool is a little bit tighter, and that just makes Fellerine the Forgotten such a wonderful legendary card at the moment. And then beyond Fellerine and Halveria, we have a bit of competition, because there's Bosic, Audio Engineer, and then there's some lists that use Rowdy Fan, because Rowdy Fan can give more attack to Lady Steno and make it potentially even more lethal. So still a little unclear which one of those is better. In general, Rowdy Fan is quite low in performance, so maybe Rowdy Fan, even though it allows you to set up those combo turns with Lady Steno, maybe that's still an inferior approach compared to just using Posig and just being more aggressive overall, not setting up for those turns for later, but just aiming to end the game as quickly as possible. But there's still a bunch of testing going on with this archetype. Anyway, this archetype looks like one of the meta-defining archetypes in the game at the moment. Druid has not been performing nearly at the same level as Death Knight and Demon Hunter have, but the strongest Druid archetype, there's a bunch of different variants of these Hero Power Druids, and Hero Power Druid is pretty much the way to go. Free Spirits, Groovy Cats, Peaceful Vipers. The strongest variant seems to be the one that uses Zog Foxsnout and Crazed Alchemist, because you use Zog Foxsnout typically with Anubra Khan with Undecking, so you gain a lot of armor. Those Quillboars can have so much health. They have as much health as you have gained armor that turn. They have as much attack as you have gained attack that turn. But the attack is typically not that important. You can't get it so high easily anyway, but just having those Quillboar as huge taunts and then having the Crazed Alchemist to flip those stats, hit face, boom. That seems to be the strongest version of Hero Power Druid in existence at the moment. There is still a lot of fine-tuning left for the archetype. For example, Posig Audio Engineer really does not belong in this deck. I mean, that just doesn't fit at all. But the concept of Fog and Crazed Alchemist, that is solid. And for Hunter, the best Hunter archetype is Face Hunter. And what has surprised me a little bit is that Queen Azara is the best performing card in this Face Hunter list. At least in the early stats, that's quite phenomenal. But you do have ways to cast 3 spells now, because you have so many ways to cast 3 spells, because you can cast them with the Barrel of Monkeys, you can cast them with a bunch of bananas. One card is basically 3 spells. And that also makes the Ancient Krakenbane viable. Ancient Krakenbane is also performing super well in this deck, absolutely needs to be included. And yeah, this is a little bit different than my take of the archetype. We'll have to see how the archetypes are going to be refined and fine-tuned, but Krakenbane is definitely here to stay, and Queen Azara is something to keep an eye on. If the performance level of Queen Azara continues like it is right now, then I guess Queen Azara is going to be the new curve topper in Face Hunter. Mage is generally struggling a little bit in Festival of Legends. Naga Mage has failed. The Manastorm Combo Mage has failed. The Lightshow Mage has failed. Just none of those mage decks can withstand the aggression, the just pure aggression that Outcast Demon Hunter or Frost Death Knight can push. And so far, the best mage deck has actually been Mech Mage. Because Mech Mage has gained some new buffs from Festival of Legends. We have frequency oscillators in here. Posig Audio Engineer again making an appearance. Posig is the free legendary from the rewards track, and it's a phenomenal card in a wide variety of aggressive decks. Doesn't go into slower decks, but in a wide variety of aggressive decks, Posig is just wonderful. And Mech Mage, currently the best performing mage deck, that was a bit of a surprise development. But we'll see if Mech Mage is going to be able to defend adequately against those Death Knights and Demon Hunters. Right now it looks like it has some early game weaknesses. This is the least weak mage deck in the early game, which is why it's best performing one. But some of those weaknesses do exist, and they are kind of hard to fix in a tribal deck like this one, because there's not a lot of room for you to maneuver. Paladin is perhaps the third strongest class in the game right now, right after Demon Hunter and Death Knight. And the way to build pure Paladin, it looks like the superior approach is this Jitterbug Pureator for card draw. No Order in the Court, not using that Blood Crusader stuff. Just rely on your Divine Shields, rely on your minion types, and rock on. However, there is also an alternative approach, and that alternative approach is Silverhand Paladin. Slightly weaker than pure Paladin, but still pretty strong, and Muster for Battle is the best performing card in this deck. Like, it's such an old card. Just imagine the power level of Muster for Battle when it was released. I mean, it was played in every Paladin deck. And yeah, because it's still competitive. That's just totally crazy. Anyway, Muster for Battle is the key card that the Silverhand Paladins build around. I'm not sure about all of this Order in the Court, Luthraxian the Redeemed, Blood Crusader. That set might not be all right answers, but Muster for Battle, building a Silverhand Paladin around that in some way, looks like it's a viable approach. And we also have more control decks in the meta than just Blood Death Knight because Priest. Control Priest looks viable. Yikes. Yeah, Control Priest. This Thief Priest is currently the most popular version. I've also seen some Twitter threads about people not using the Thievery package, but just building Control Priest. We don't have statistics on those yet. This Thief Priest, I faced it a couple of times, and when it gets its RNG right, it is infuriating to play against. I was playing like Big Warrior, and then Priest randomly discovered the answer like 8 times in the game. Yeah, that sort of stuff can happen. Either way, this Priest deck can defend even against those aggressive powerful decks, because it has stuff like Harmonic Pop, it has stuff like Cannibalize. Cannibalize is just so incredibly strong. That health restoration, you build a big minion and boom, that just heals Priest right up. And then, culminating in the best card in the deck, which is Blackwater Behemoth. The Colossal. It gets the lure out there, something hits in the Behemoth, that's 8 lifesteal, and then there's still Behemoth to worry about. So, yeah, this Priest is surprisingly competitive. Clearly above 50% win rate. And that's a little scary. However, it is not the only Priest deck that is above 50%, because the good old Undead Priest is also still above 50% win rate, still doing well. It got Idol's Adoration. Your hero power costs 0, and hero power costing 0 is pretty sweet when your hero power just punches in damage a lot of times, so that's pretty good. Nice upgrade for the archetype. The archetype is still completely viable, and if you don't want to play a slow Priest deck but you want to play Priest, Undead Priest is still there. The class that currently seems to suffer the most is Rogue. It's hard to find like a Rogue deck. I mean, overall, hard to find statistics on Rogue decks. Miracle Rogue was expected to be good, but Miracle Rogue is maybe a little bit too slow to survive the punch of those Death Knight and Demon Hunter decks. Instead, the best performing Rogue deck right now seems to be Pirate Rogue. Like, yeah, Pirate Rogue got some improvements, Instrument Deck, Harmonic, Hip Hop, Mic Drop. There's some ways to buff up your weapon, and then you can have those pirates and you swing with your swordfish. I sort of see that, but it's still not great. It's barely at 50%. So Rogue currently the class that struggles the most, but of course Rogue has plenty of tricks up its sleeve. It's possible that in the next couple of days there will be good Rogue decks coming. Shaman's doing better again. Okay, Shaman was doing better in the short Frankenstein meta, where Evolved Shaman was unnerfed before the rotation. And now Shaman is playing Totem Shaman. Yes, Totem Shaman is finally a thing. Grand Totem Eyesore, Stone Rite, just doing totem stuff, using Jive Insects to transform one of your totems maybe into Ragnar's the Firelord. Not bad at all. Tour Guide is here, so you're able to pump out more totems thanks to Tour Guide, more minions on the board. Excellent thing, exactly the type of thing that Shaman wants to do. And it's not the top tier deck, but clearly above 50% win rate, so Totem Shaman finally playable again. In addition to Rogue, Warlock is another class that seems to be struggling a little bit. Although I think Warlock might find the answers if the decks are just built properly, because I played a bunch of Warlock and I had a better experience than the statistics would indicate. Anyway, the best performing Warlock deck is this Thaddius Warlock. Thaddius Warlock just cheating out big stuff. And cheating out big stuff got even easier thanks to Voidcaller, Enhanced Dreadlord, Mal'Ganis. So now it can cheat out both Undead and it can cheat out Demons. And if it gets to cheat out some stuff, then it can withstand that assault. The other Warlock deck that has seen more play is the Fatigue Imp Warlock. I think the Fatigue Imp Warlock list that I have been playing has been better than the one that I found stats for. It's also roughly at 50%, but I think it can be done in a better way than it has been done so far in the statistics. So we'll see how Imp Warlock is going to happen. We'll see what happens with Curses. I played with Curses on day one, had a good experience with those as well. Couldn't find any stats of those yet. But so far this Thaddius Warlock seems to be the best performing archetype. And finally we have Warrior. As expected, Control Warrior failed again, yeah. Menagerie Warrior doing better. This is slightly above 50%, but I have to say that this deck looks clearly a lot weaker than my Menagerie Warrior, because this uses too many mechs and too weak mechs and stuff like Stereo Totem, which just doesn't really do anything. So this is slower, less responsive, and has less punch overall, so yeah, it's just an inferior version compared. So check out my video about Menagerie Warrior if you want to see a good Menagerie Warrior, but even this one is above 50% win rate. the only warrior archetype that seems to be able to do that right now. Getting the party animal, roaring applause, power sliders. It's just a menagerie fiesta. One thing from the statistics, Rockmaster Vaughn. I'm not sure if it even belongs in the deck. So if you don't have Rockmaster Vaughn yet, maybe you don't want to craft that either. It's totally possible that you just want to replace it with something else. An expensive legendary, and it doesn't seem to contribute that much to the archetype. Again, things are moving pretty quickly, so Rockmaster Vaughn is quite slow, and you just can't afford the tempo loss usually. But yeah, those are the 15 best performing decks at the moment. Demon Hunter, Death Knight dominating the meta, Paladin coming in as the third class, then Warlock, Warrior, and Rogue, the three bottom classes at the moment. But every class has something playable, Rogue probably having the least playable things right now. But of course it's early in Festival of Legends, the meta is still developing. There's a lot of things that we can already see from the statistics that need to be improved about these decks, and then we'll get to see about their real performance in the longer term. Anyway, Festival of Legends out now, so here are some decks for all classes for you to have fun. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.